Israel is gaining strength, and Hezbollah is essentially eliminated.
And then they see all this happening, and they think, okay, Assad is super weak now, so let's attack.
Let's strike.
Yeah. And then in one day, boom, they capture Aleppo, second largest city in Syria. The next few days later, boom, Damascus is fallen. All the Syrian military abandoned their posts, just leave it for grabs.
It's one of the world hotspots to watch in 2025. What happens in Syria over the course of this year could have major ramifications not only for Israel, but also for the United States. Our TBN Israel correspondents Yair Pinto and Mati Shoshani, co-hosts of the brand new TBN show Boots on the Ground, traveled to Israel's very tense border with Syria for a closer look.
The shifting sands of the Middle East have once again placed Israel at a critical crossroad. Following the collapse of the Assad regime in Syria, the situation on Israel's northern border has become increasingly tense. Rebel forces have moved swiftly to take control of areas once held by the Syrian army, including the buffer zone near the Golan Heights and parts of the Hermon Mountain. In a decisive response, the IDF's Northern Command has activated emergency plans, taking over the Hermon buffer zone and deploying tanks and infantry units along the Alpha line to prevent potential incursions into Israel. Israel's actions suggest it is stepping into a new role as the de facto police of this region. This weekend, we're heading up north to Manara Ridge, which is a strategic point on Israel's border with Lebanon that offers a clear view of the Syrian Mount Hermon buffer zone that Israel has captured. Okay, so let me, go back a little bit. So the IDF has been operating against Hezbollah in Lebanon for more than 2 months, crippling Lebanon, neutralizing all their leadership, all their infrastructure, and basically they cannot, function as they used to as a terrorist organization.
They're no longer a fighting force, not the way they were.
Yes, then Lebanon reached a ceasefire agreement with Israel that there will be no fighting for 60 days. Okay, successful, not successful.
But so they had the Iranians lose power.
Yes.
The Syrian army is losing power. The Russians are losing power because they're busy
in Ukraine.
In Ukraine. Israel is gaining strength, and Hezbollah is essentially eliminated.
And then they see all this happening, and they think, okay, Assad is super weak now, let's attack.
Let's strike.
Yeah. And then in one day, boom, they capture Aleppo, second largest city in Syria. The next few days later, boom, Damascus is fallen. All the Syrian military abandoned their posts, just leave it for grabs. At that second, or that time, the Israeli Air Force carries out more than 400 targeted strikes
in a day.
All the aerial force of Bashar al-Assad, meaning the helicopters, the fighter jets, the airplanes,
are eliminated on the ground.
The tanks, the navy, the boats, the weapon stockpiles, the chemical weapons factories, which is very important. All of them were destroyed within a few hours.
Between Israel and Syria, there's like a really big physical barrier, and the physical barrier is called the Hermon Mountain Range. And the Hermon Mountain Range is the minority of it. I think we have like an eighth of it on the Israeli side. And Shaldag takes over in a very, very swift movement, takes over the remaining part of it. And we get these amazing images. The Israeli soldiers in the snow on Syrian
flags, yeah.
We didn't have to shoot a single bullet to take over the Hermon. The reason being is that there was a power vacuum created. And unlike past events, the IDF said we can't allow others to fill this vacuum, so let's go in. And we did. We took over the Hermon, we took over these key geographical positions immediately.
And it looks like we had the plans ready from before.
Absolutely.
Do it. So we didn't wait, we didn't ask permission from the international community to go in and to take control.
Well, we've seen what that's done in the
past. Take a look at this huge mountain that we're seeing right next to us. Okay. This is the Hermon mountain that's on the news every day.
The Hermon Ridge prevents the Syrians from flooding into northern Israel. We need to control the key locations. We need to make sure that they can't come into Israel, they can't threaten our civilians. It's so clear that we must protect these communities, that we should never give up any piece of land in this region, that we should always be strong on the borders and make sure that whatever terrorist group it is and whatever the Iranians sort of
We're ready.
concoct, we're ready, we're strong, we're present on the border, even if it means that me and you are doing reserves till we're 65 years old.
Hopefully a little before that. For the past year, the north was almost empty from tourism, empty from Israeli visitors that come and spend a Saturday here, spend a weekend here. But immediately when the ceasefire was announced, and immediately after the IDF took these strategic locations, the security and the people of Israel started to come back to the north. I don't know if it's because we're used to being under attack and not under attack, and this is our life, so we make this switch really fast. But it's really amazing that this is the mentality and the resilience of the people of Israel. Guys, thank you for joining us on this day to the border with Syria, to the border with Lebanon. And as you see, the war is ongoing for more than a year now. We need your help in prayer. Okay, so you need to understand what's happening and then help us pray for the situation. And keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem.
And Yair joins us now from the Israel-Syria border. His TBN show every Thursday night is called Boots on the Ground in Israel. That's exactly what he's doing right now, boots on the ground in one of the hottest hot zones in the world. Yair, first of all, what are you seeing there along the Israel-Syria border?
Well, Eric, what we see here is IDF presence in the demilitarized zone, what used to be the demilitarized zone on the Syrian side. We see Israeli forces on the Hermon mountain, and not the Israeli ski resort. I'm talking about the Syrian Hermon mountain, where only, less than a month ago, the Syrian military had bases there. But now the IDF took the opportunity where basically the Syrian regime collapsed to take hold of all the strategic locations in Syria. This is the situation. There is an active war zone in Syria, which is 500 meters where I'm standing, and we hear explosions all day long here in the Syrian side. I mean, we are safe here on the Israeli side because our forces are deep inside Syria, and according to recent reports, the Israeli forces, the IDF, are 25 kilometers. I think that's less than 20 miles away from Damascus, what is the Syrian capital. So the IDF is not wasting this opportunity to protect the citizens of Israel by placing boots on the ground in Syria and defending our people, because we don't know what's going to come up next. We don't know if this HTS terror group is going to be another Islamic State. We don't know what their stance against Israel, against the Jewish people. We don't know if Turkey is going to make a move in Syria. We don't know if the Kurds are going to take over this country. We don't know what's going to happen. Everything is unclear at the moment, but the IDF is not taking any chances and is taking the advantage and placing our forces on strategic locations. Eric, this is the situation here from the border between Israel and Syria.
Yeah, very smart. And Yair, as you mentioned, smart for Israel to do this preemptively. And that HTS group that is now the main power broker in Syria, at least so far, they're al-Qaeda linked, so not very moderate to say the least. Hey, last question, about 30 seconds left. Iranian influence completely pushed out of Syria now that Assad has collapsed, or is Iran still trying to get its claws in that country?
Well, Iran did not give up. Iran is not giving up on its influence and presence in Syria. We just heard yesterday that the supreme leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran announced that they will gain control in Syria once more. So it's not over. Iran is in the corner now, but they're pushing back. And Israel needs to be vigilant against the head of the snake, which is the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Yeah, Yair, great breakdown as always. Hey, my friend, it's a cold day there on the Golan Heights on the Israel-Syria border. Go get warm. Thank you for your great reporting. Be safe. Yair Pinto, host of Boots on the Ground, seen right here on TBN every Thursday night. God bless, Yair. Welcome back to Stakelbeck Tonight. The Middle East is on fire, but the Israel Defense Forces have done an incredible job of dousing the flames over the past several months with stunning blows against Iran and its terror proxies. So what does this year hold for the world's most chaotic and strategic region? Our good friend Elliot Cohen is a former Israel Defense Forces major, a top military and strategic analyst, and host of the Conflict Uncovered podcast. He joins us now from northern Israel. Elliot, great to see you as always, my friend. And we start with some tragic news that there was yet another terror attack in northern Samaria today. 3 Israelis killed by Palestinian terrorists. Elliot, do you see Judea and Samaria, the biblical heartland? The world calls it the West Bank. We call it Judea and Samaria. Do you see this as maybe an emerging terror hotspot where the Iranian regime is trying to get its claws into?
Well, Eric, first of all, Judea and Samaria have been a hotspot for quite a number of years now, including since October 7th. It fell into sort of the background because of the intensity of fighting going on in Gaza and in Lebanon, and of course the strikes back and forth with Iran, with the Houthis in Yemen, and of course the whole Syrian story. I think I just took us around the entire region. Having said all of that, given the fact that Hezbollah has been heavily beaten back, I hate to say defeated because they're not defeated in total. Hamas, likewise, their military capability greatly dismantled, but they're still out there in the field. Judea and Samaria becomes a means for them, and here in particular Hamas, and of course Iran, to find another field to begin to play up, to raise intensity, and that's what they're trying to do now.
Yeah, and Elliot, you make a great point. The Iranian Ring of Fire, several of those rings have been really smashed thanks to the IDF. I think of Hamas and Hezbollah. You think of the Iranian Shia militias now saying, hey, maybe we won't attack Israel. We think of the Assad regime collapsing in Syria, so it makes sense Iran looking for new fronts. Do you see the Iranian regime right now, Elliot, as, and by the way, their air defenses were destroyed by Israel in an October 26th counterattack. Do you see the Iranian regime as being more vulnerable now, possibly than at any time since the Iran-Iraq war in the 1980s?
They are certainly vulnerable. I wouldn't write them off. I think that the idea that they can be easily taken out is overly optimistic. But having said that, we have to keep in mind regimes like Iran, as we saw with Syria, are what I call brittle regimes, not fragile, but brittle. In other words, they're hard, they're hardcore, but if they get hit the right way in the right place, they could shatter. And we saw that with Assad. I don't want to predict that with Iran. I believe that the Iranian population tacitly supports the regime much more than we're seeing and hearing in the West. But they're certainly weak. Their economy is in terrible shape. The Iranian currency is at the lowest point it's ever been at in many, many, many decades. As you mentioned, their air defenses are taken out. Their allies and proxies and agents have been beaten up. So they're exposed, vulnerable to attack. But I don't foresee an internal collapse.
We had tens of thousands of residents of the north evacuated during the war with Hezbollah. Any sense of when the residents of the north will feel comfortable returning home to the communities near the Lebanon border? Will that be anytime soon now that we see this shaky ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah?
The answer to the question is going to come in the next month or so. It's still too early to tell. First of all, let's keep in mind that many of those communities have been physically either heavily damaged or in some cases destroyed. In other words, even if the people wanted to come home tomorrow, they don't have homes to come home to. They don't have public institutions, schools, and the like for their communities. That all has to be rebuilt. That's months, many months ahead before many people can return home physically, once again, even if they wanted to, starting tomorrow morning. But more importantly, the threat of Hezbollah, which has been at least temporarily lifted by the IDF's combat operations, air and ground, and they were outstanding. And I'm a critic. I'm an insider, but still a critic. Amazingly successful, effective work by the IDF. Hezbollah is not destroyed. They're working to rebuild. They're working to find their way back in. And the critical element here, first of all, is how much Israel continues to toe the line. And we've been doing it very well in the past month since the ceasefire went into effect, not permitting any violation of the ceasefire that we're aware of and we're keeping close track to go uncovered and unresponded to. If that continues to be done, that will increase the security over the coming months. But there's a critical month ahead, the 60 days of the ceasefire, by which time Israel is supposed to withdraw from Lebanon. America is pressing for an Israeli withdrawal no matter what. The Lebanese army has still not moved in and taken any significant control of the south. And of course, UNIFIL, the United Nations forces, have always been totally useless. There's no reason to assume they're going to get any better.
Yeah.
So those are the three players that we have to look at and see in another month or so. Does Hezbollah begin to work its way back into the south, in which case residents are going to say, no, thank you. We're not putting our families in that danger that we narrowly escaped from in October 2023 until that's cleared up. So it's still too early to answer the question definitively.
Yeah, we love the people of the north and those beautiful communities in northern Israel, Elliot. And not too far from northern Israel, of course, is Syria. We now have a jihadi regime in charge there. But is the larger force behind that jihadi regime in Syria, Elliot, Turkey and the regime of Recep Tayyip Erdogan? And as Turkey continues to exert more influence in Syria at Israel's doorstep, could Turkey and Israel, tensions between those two nations, start to ramp up?
Well, they're already pretty high. Let's keep in mind that Erdogan is Muslim Brotherhood. He's a radical Islamist. But before we even get into the Turkish element of it, let's keep in mind that Jolani, the erstwhile head of Syria, although he certainly is not in total control of the country, is jockeying between three imperial powers who have a tremendous interest in that country: Russia, Turkey, and Iran. And that's an imperial conflict going on for centuries, not decades, centuries. So here, too, I would say Erdogan certainly would like to impose as much of his influence as he can over Syria. I think that Jolani is playing the Russians and Iranians against him because, with all due respect to the assistance that the Turks gave to him in the uprising against Assad, that was yesterday. What have you done for me lately? He's going to play for the best game and the best deal he can get.
Yeah, well, thank God we have you on the case. Elliot showed off with a great overview of what's happening in the region, why it impacts all of us. Host of the Conflict Uncovered podcast. You can find it at Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Elliot, thanks again, my friend. God bless. We will talk to you again soon.
Stakelbeck Tonight, my all-new nightly series on current events through a bold biblical lens. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching, and God bless.